Welcome to RealGM Radio. I'm Wes Goldberg. These are my instant reactions to Game 3 of the NBA Finals. We have a series, folks, and the Indiana Pacers are for real. All right, what's up, RealGM Radio? I am Wes Goldberg. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for subscribing on your favorite podcast app. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button here on YouTube to stick with us throughout the rest of the NBA Finals and the NBA offseason. We have big plans for the Finals and for the offseason, so you're going to want to keep up. RealGM Radio here the morning after Game 3 of the NBA Finals with just a bunch of reactions. But before I get into the game, I want to zoom out and go big picture. This Indiana Pacers team is for real. This Pacers team is for real. I've been trying to tell you. I've picked them in every series in these playoffs except for the NBA Finals. I did have the Thunder in 5 games. But I said in my prediction, a tight 5 games, and I wasn't dismissing the Pacers at all. But I'm not even trying to make this a victory lap thing, okay? I just want everybody to know this Pacers team is for real. And now that they're up 2-1 in these finals, I don't know what else to tell you if you don't think that they're for real. This team continues to go out and prove that they can win games on the road. They can win games at home. They do not lose back-to-back playoff games, and they are now the first team seeded 4th or lower to take a 2-1 lead in the finals since the Rockets in 1995. And we remember about that Rockets team. They won the championship. So TBD on whether or not these Pacers win the championship. But once you go up 2-1 in a finals, all right, you're real. I don't care how the rest of these finals play out. And maybe you could say, well, they made the finals, so they're for real. I don't know. It didn't seem like that based on how people were talking about this Pacers team, talking about the Thunder having a cakewalk and all these things. Again, I picked the Thunder in 5. I never thought it was going to be a cakewalk. I thought this was going to be a very competitive, very tight series. I just thought that the Thunder were going to pull these games out in the end. But it turns out it's been the Pacers who have been better down the stretch for 2 out of these 3 games. I will get into the game here in a second, but at the end of this one, when it became clear that Indiana was going to win, I kept thinking about Game 1 and how that game could be the game that tilts the finals. I still think the Thunder are the better basketball team on paper. I think they're the better basketball team overall. If they played 100 games with the Pacers, they'd probably win 60 or 70 of those games. Okay, but you don't play 100 games in the finals. You play 7. And as much as I think the Thunder are the better team, I don't know that they're so good that they can beat the Pacers 5 times out of 7, which is essentially what they would have to do in order to win the championship. Maybe they can. I don't know. I probably still pick the Thunder to win the finals, but that's what they would have to do, because Indiana went into Game 1 and just straight stole that game. They stole that game. The Thunder were the better team for 99% of Game 1, and then we all remember what happened, the 15-point comeback, Tyrese Haliburton shot at the end. If the Pacers actually do this thing and win the championship, if they pull this off, Game 1 goes down as one of the most interesting games in finals history. Tyrese Haliburton's shot goes down as one of the great shots in NBA Finals history. And that Game 1 comeback goes down as one of the great comebacks. If the Pacers pull this off, and here was the other thing I was thinking down the stretch of that game, Haliburton doing his thing, closing the game like a pro. What a response from Tyrese Haliburton. Reggie Miller sitting there courtside. I couldn't help but think, if the Pacers pull this off, does Tyrese Haliburton instantly become the greatest Pacer of all time? That's a tough question. I don't know. You'd probably have to ask a Pacers fan, and my guess is that a Pacers fan would probably still go with Reggie Miller just because of the longevity, what he means to the franchise, how many games he played with the Pacers, where he is in all the franchise record books, all that stuff. But Haliburton will have a ring, and that's something Reggie Miller never did. And he will have led this Pacers team to one of the most improbable championships of all time in NBA history. And that's all-time stuff, man. Like, that is stuff that vaults you up rankings and history indexes and all that stuff. I mean, I don't know. You'd have to ask a Pacers fan, but Haliburton's got a really good argument if they do this. And what that means to Siakam, winning 2 championships, 2 of which were the first in franchise history, one with the Raptors and then potentially here with Indiana. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but these are just things I'm thinking about at the end of Game 3 when it became clear that the Pacers were going to go ahead and win that game. And that speaks to that moment and how big all of this really is. But let's talk about the game here a little bit more. So I got some stats. I want to start with some stats here. The Pacers outscored the Thunder by, in the second quarter, 40-28. The Pacers won the turnover battle, 17-13. They had 17 fast break points to OKC's 10. They had 50 points in the paint to OKC's 48. And really, the Thunder just stayed in the game with free throws, a couple of more offensive rebounds. But the Pacers kind of won this game on all fronts. The Thunder shot a little bit better from three-point range, but they only made one more three-pointer than the Pacers did. So, look, this was the first time in this series where it felt like the Pacers won this wire to wire, right? Obviously, they won Game 1, but they steal that game at the very end. This was the first time where it felt, and in Game 1, the Thunder played better for most of that game, 99% of that game. This was the first game where the Pacers were the better team from tip to close, from buzzer to buzzer. This was the first game where the Pacers were clearly the better team for the entire game for all 4 quarters. And a lot of credit goes to Tyrese Haliburton. 1 rebound shy of a triple-double. He was aggressive. He took 17 shots, the most in the finals for him so far. And you could tell the difference from the first play of the game. First play, high screen from Miles Turner. They get Chet Holmgren on a switch. And then Haliburton gets into the paint for a running floater. 18 seconds on the shot clock when he takes that shot. Turner was wide open on the pop, right at the top of the key. Didn't matter. Haliburton took the shot. He established himself as a scoring threat early on, and I thought that was huge. I loved how decisive he was. I loved how quick in the shot clock it was. It was aggressive Haliburton, but it was also a lot of what makes the Pacers in terms of the fast pace, the up-tempo, the quick decision-making, the boom, we're already doing this thing before you even know what hit you. The Thunder don't want to give up that switch. The Thunder don't want to give up those kinds of shots, and yet Haliburton found them. He hit like 3 or 4 running floaters in this game. That shot was available for him, especially early in the game. And he identified it, went after it until they basically took it away. And then when they did take it away, they gave up some other stuff. Let's go to the third quarter. Another play that stood out, game tied. Haliburton rejects a screen on the left side of the floor, goes right at the Thunder defense, rejects that Miles Turner screen. Both defenders, Jalen Williams and Lou Dort, take a step over to the middle of the floor, which is Haliburton knows, okay, they're going to try to take away middle. They're always trying to take away middle from me. So he rejects the screen, goes down the left side of the floor, gets to the basket, and finishes through contact at the rim. Again, early in the shot clock, love the aggression, love the decisiveness, and it reminded me a little bit of that play that Haliburton had in overtime to close out the Milwaukee Bucks where he got Giannis on a switch and just attacked him. And it wasn't that big of a deal because obviously it didn't close out the Thunder, and Giannis is just an incredible defender, and that matchup is just bananas. But what reminded me of that, what was similar to me between the two plays was the decisiveness, the aggressiveness, but more than anything, I think we forget how good of a first step Tyrese Haliburton has. When he really wants to get downhill, and he's got like this weird body, like his hips sit really high, he's got those long legs, kind of gangly. You don't think of him as a guy with that type of athleticism, with that kind of first step. But every once in a while, he'll kind of move into that area, kind of take a couple of warm-up steps, then get his body really low, lower that center of gravity, and then just attack you off the dribble. And it feels like it catches a defense by surprise every single time, and that's what it looked like in this one. One other play that I want to highlight from Haliburton midway through the fourth quarter, game's tied at 98. They're bringing the ball up. Andrew Nembhard pitches it back to Miles Turner at the top of the key. Turner flows into a dribble handoff with Haliburton, a quick little pitch back to Haliburton. Then Turner screens off Cason Wallace. Wallace gets around the screen. Miles Turner flips it, rescreens, and then Haliburton kind of steps around that screen to get Wallace off of his tail. and then get Hartenstein on a switch. Hartenstein was in that drop. Haliburton was having a field day attacking Chet and Hartenstein in that drop. And it wasn't like a full aggressive drop. It was a little bit higher up, but it wasn't at the level. It wasn't a full blitz. They weren't doubling off the ball screens either. So that seems like something that OKC is going to have to adjust going into game 4 is, okay, what do we really want to do when they're setting the screens that high? But getting off track here, Haliburton steps back on that Hartenstein when he gets that switch, drills that three-pointer to break the tie. Early in the shot clock, aggressive, decisive, looked like the Pacers. And the Thunder didn't really have an answer for it. Like I said, he got Chet and Hartenstein in that drop for those three-pointers 2 or 3 times in the second half in a pretty tight game. So all these shots were early in the clock. They had their fastest pace, the Pacers did on offense, than in any game of this series per PBP stats. And that showed on the eye test, and then I looked up the stats, obviously, and it proved out in the stats as well. Defensively, I thought Indiana was way better than they were in game 2. They held SGA to under 30 points, 24 points on 9 of 20 shooting. The point of attack defense was way better. Way better. They mixed in different looks. They blitzed more. They played up higher on the screens. The big storyline coming out of game 2 was how high Oklahoma City was setting their screens for SGA to get him going downhill, get him in space so that he can make those decisions with a little bit more cleanly than he did in game 1. Indiana adjusted. They come up higher. But not only did they come up higher, the help defense behind it was way better. Way better to the point where they actually forced Shai into help and then into turnovers. 6 turnovers for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in this game. One of them was a travel where Haliburton was the help defender, and SGA thought he was turning the corner against the double, and Haliburton's that help defender at the nail, and SGA's like, whoa, I didn't expect you to be here, and he kind of just stumbles back a step, and then they call a travel on him. And then a couple of bad passes where he was trying to hit the skip pass because that help defense behind the 2 on the ball on the screen, the help defense behind it was closing in so quickly that it basically took away the roll man on 2 of these possessions, and Shai tried to force it with a skip pass to the opposite side a couple of times, and on one time TJ McConnell picked it off, and the other time I think it was Haliburton that picked it off. So 6 turnovers for Shai, the most he's had in a game since December. So that's pretty intense. I thought Andrew Nembhard, Ben Shepherd deserve a shout out. They were great in their one-on-one defense against Shai. Miles Turner, I thought he made 3 or 4 huge defensive plays, had a chase down block, or I don't know if they counted it as a block. It looked to me like a block. Maybe it's a contest. You never know how they're going to count these things, but had a couple of really big plays at the rim, especially in the second half. And TJ McConnell was awesome. Absolute spark plug, built for the NBA Finals moments. Camera kept panning to his dad drinking what looked like a vodka soda in the stands, and cannot say I blamed him if that was my son out there. I'd also probably be drinking quite a bit, but he was great. Total spark plug. Got 3 of those steals on the inbounds passes that just felt like killers. And I know the Thunder were asked about it after the game, and they talked about how big of a deal those kind of free points were. There was a moment in the second half where it was a 4-point game, and the Pacers score. McConnell steals the inbound. He puts it back up. And instead of the Thunder having a 4-point lead, the game's tied. And in a nip and tuck game, in a game that was going back and forth like this one, that stuff's huge, right? That stuff is huge. And we saw how big of a deal it was at the end. Let's turn our attention to the Oklahoma City Thunder. The 2 games they lost in this series were because of a lack of execution. The end of game 1, the defense fell apart. It got way too loose, allowed the Thunder to get downhill. Remember the Thunder, their big adjustment at the end of game 1. I'm sorry, the Pacers. The big adjustment that the Pacers made at the end of game 1 was, hey, let's get Haliburton off the ball. We're going to let Nembhard run pick and roll with Miles Turner. And they just ran that down OKC's throat at the end of game 1. And it worked over and over and over again. You're like, why is this working? Well, Oklahoma City's defense got way too loose. They were allowing those drives to happen. They were overhelping in the wrong places, all this stuff. They just weren't locked in. Up 15, they weren't at home, were not locked in. They responded with a great game in game 2. But in game 3, I thought their defense wasn't as good as it was in game 2, but really the lack of execution was on the offensive end. Way too many turnovers in game 3. I gave you the turnover numbers already. 17 turnovers for the Thunder. That's more than they have had. And they have not had more than, or I'm sorry, it was 19 team turnovers for the Thunder. 19 team turnovers for the Thunder. They haven't had more than 16 in their last 18 playoff games. Very uncharacteristic, right? We always talk about the Thunder in terms of how many turnovers they force. The other part about the Thunder is that they don't give the ball away. They gave the ball away a lot in this one. Shai was responsible for 6 of those giveaways, but it was the entire team. It was the entire team. They were not good. They were not good at taking care of the ball. And those TJ McConnell inbounds pass steals are sort of the poster child of how careless the Thunder were. You get a couple of those in a season. Like in a full season, you'll see one team maybe throw away an inbounds pass a couple of times. To throw away 3 of them in one game, that shows a real lack of attention to detail, lack of execution, not being locked in. And for people who had concerns about the Thunder's youth going into these playoffs, or maybe even going into these finals, this game was a win for them. Okay? And that's when, I try not to go too extreme on these things, but look, the Thunder are young. They have never been in the NBA Finals. And it's not that the Pacers aren't young. They are young too, but they've got Rick Carlisle, a championship-winning player and coach. They've got Pascal Siakam, who's won a championship. Thomas Bryant's also on the roster. He's won a championship. Not sure how much that matters. He only played like 3 minutes in this game, whatever. They've got guys who have been around like TJ McConnell. I don't know. They feel more experienced than the Thunder do. I mean, even last year, they were in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Thunder didn't get that far. They did not get to the conference finals. So, again, I'm not trying to be too much like, oh, they're too young to win the championship. No, they can definitely still win this series and still win the championship. And I already said, I'm probably still picking them to win the championship. But 2 things can be true. And they can be very young and have to grow during this series. And I thought they responded tremendously after game 1. Defensively, it was a great game in game 2. And now they're going to have to clean some things up here in game 3. And I don't even mean to take away credit from the Pacers. Again, their defense was awesome. Their adjustments were terrific. They earned this win. They were the better team wire to wire. But there are little things like those turnovers on those inbounds passes and things like that, and just missed closeouts late in the game, just missed rebounds. There's a big missed rebound that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was just standing in the corner while Tyrese Haliburton chased his missed shot and got the offensive rebound. It's things like that show you, oh, this is still a young team that has moments of looking young. As much as this young team does not look young for 98% of the time, they are still young, and they're going to look young for moments. And credit to the Pacers for when those moments happen, pouncing and taking advantage of those moments. I'm not changing my pick. I still think the Thunder are going to win this series, and I feel terrible even saying it because I love this Pacers team. I absolutely love this Pacers team, and I love watching this series. And this is definitely now a series. And it's not the landslide that people thought it was going to be. My biggest takeaway, regardless of who wins the series, regardless of market size, regardless of TV ratings, these have been the best NBA finals we've had since 2022. This is better than the 2023 finals. It's better than the 2024 finals. And this is great basketball.